When the transfer student David accused me of stealing his things, my 3 good friends who grew up with me didn't believe me. They threatened me, saying, "As long as you give David your admission to Harvard University, we will intercede for you and suppress this matter." I refused, so they locked me in the toilet cubicle, forced me to kneel down and apologize to David, and beat me until my skin was torn. Later, David killed my dad with his car and found someone to take the blame. I was heartbroken and questioned them angrily, but they said indifferently, "We didn't kill your dad. Don't you love money? Just give you money." But when I boarded the special plane with my father's ashes, they finally panicked. The story is about to begin. If you like it, remember to like and subscribe. That plane was a relic left to me by my grandfather, and no amount of money could buy it. When David knelt down in front of me and begged me to return the watch to him, the 3 good friends who grew up with me all looked at me with disappointment and disgust. Those looks pierced my heart like a knife and chilled me. "David saw you sneaking back into the classroom during physical education class, and the watch disappeared after that. Was there anyone else entering the classroom, if not you?" I clearly didn't steal, but in their minds, I became a person who would do anything for money. Sophia, who was a trainee teacher at the school, helped David up from the ground. She was no longer as gentle to me as before, and said in a cold tone, "James, return the watch to David quickly. You can't buy your conscience by selling it." Emily, the class beauty who used to be my best friend, looked at my wrist and said seriously, "I have never seen this watch on your wrist before. You still don't admit that you stole it from David?" I explained aggrievedly, "This was bought for me by my dad. My dad said that my 18th birthday would be soon, so he saved money for a long time and secretly bought me the watch I always wanted." But now, David's words made them believe that I had stolen the watch. "This watch costs several thousand yuan. Can your poor father afford it?" Mia, the school beauty who used to trust me the most, no longer had tenderness in her eyes. Instead, she held David in her arms with heartache. "I really misjudged you. This watch is a memory left by his family to David. Do you understand how important it is to him? As long as you return the watch to David, I will give you as much money as you want. Get out of here right away after you take the money." Their accusatory and disgusted looks left me speechless. The bitterness of disappointment surged into my heart like a tsunami, drowning the warmth they had once given me. Because David was cute and always acted harmless and innocent, they believed his lies and refused to listen to my explanations. But this was a precious gift from my father, and I would never give it to David. Emily had someone take my watch away and lock me in the toilet cubicle. I screamed, "Let me out. The watch is not his, it was really given to me by my dad." In order to secretly buy this watch for me, I don't know how much work my dad had to do. He was discriminated against because of his right leg disability, but he worked 3 jobs every day to support my studies. Thinking that he had saved up money to give me a coming-of-age gift and someone took it away from me, I felt heartbroken. Facing my explanation and pleading, Emily said in a sharp and cold voice through the door, "You still don't admit it? Hen, just reflect on it here until you die." I pulled the door angrily, and the last expectation in my heart for them also disappeared with this sentence. Late at night, I was cold and hungry, curled up next to the dirty squad toilet, and a basin of ice water fell from the sky. David's vicious voice came from outside the cubicle, "James, it's easy for me to kill you. Today it's just a watch, another day, I will get more. As for you, I will make you have nothing." When they were not there, David tore off the mask of the little white rabbit and exposed his true face. In the freezing wind, my heart was even colder than my body, and I trembled as I responded, "David, you will be punished." In response, another basin of ice water was thrown at me, and David's vicious laughter gradually faded away. I wanted to break the door and get out, but the freezing cold water made me even weaker, and soon I developed a high fever. They trusted me so much that they were so anxious when I got a little skin on my hand. But now, they let others bully me like this. I was locked up for a day and a night before my kind classmates sent me to the infirmary. I didn't expect that when I walked in, I ran into Mia and David. When I saw David wearing the watch that originally belonged to me, I couldn't help but shiver all over. It was as if I was back in the toilet cubicle. It was too cold and lonely. Those hateful and disgusted eyes once again hovered in my heart. I stumbled and tried to snatch the watch back, but Mia pushed me away in dissatisfaction and said impatiently, "I'm warning you to stay away from David." She then raised her voice and said to David, "The school doctor said you fainted because you were too sad. How about this? Cartier just released a limited edition new watch, I'll buy it for you." David concealed the greedy light that flashed in his eyes, then sobbed and shook his head and said, "I can't accept such a valuable thing. I'm not greedy for money. I just want my things back." Woo! These words made Mia feel even more distressed about him, and she immediately placed an order for a new watch worth more than $1 million for him on the official website. The school doctor changed me into a set of dry clothes. I curled up on the bed in pain, but Mia came over, looked at me with disdain and said, "You should learn from David. He comes from a similar family, but he doesn't even want expensive gifts. And you are a thief who is greedy for money." "I'm not blinded by money. I'm blind to expect you to believe me." But I was too tortured by the high fever to say a word. Even though I told myself not to pay attention to her hurtful words, tears still rolled down my cheeks. Seeing me like this, the teacher looked away with sympathy and said to Mia, who was still indignant, if James had been sent here a little later, he would have developed pneumonia. I held on to a last glimmer of hope that Mia would be as concerned about me as before, but she glanced at me for a few seconds, with a hint of ridicule on the corner of her mouth, and continued, "Don't pretend, you always exercise regularly, how can your body be that weak? It seems that you haven't been taught a lesson enough." I was completely disappointed when I heard her call a 5-star chef to make seafood porridge for David with the freshest ingredients. I hadn't eaten for a day and a night, and she came over with a bowl until David had a pile of leftovers. She wanted to put the bowl on the bedside, but when she saw my hot face, she hesitated for a moment, as if she remembered that I had always been upright for more than a decade. So Mia leaned over and whispered in my ear, "James, as long as you apologize to David, I can forgive you for what happened." I felt so upset that I wanted to say that it was David who lied, but my throat was so dry that I couldn't speak. At this time, David on the bed opposite me suddenly covered his chest and shouted loudly, "Mia, I feel so uncomfortable, I can't breathe." Mia immediately threw down the bowl and ran towards him anxiously. In her voice of extreme concern for him, I fainted and dreamed that Mia, Sophia, and Emily and I were doing homework on the grass. We were talking and laughing, and they were so friendly and gentle to me, just like back in the past. Suddenly, they opened their mouths and showed their sharp teeth at me with ferocious faces, and said to me fiercely, "You thief, go to hell, we will never like you again. No, no. Get out of here, I don't want your love anymore." I struggled and shouted hoarsely, and suddenly opened my eyes, and above my head was Emily's beautiful face. Emily was wiping the sweat off my forehead with a handkerchief, and said in a flat tone, "I locked you in the toilet for your own good. If I don't teach you a lesson, I'm afraid you'll go astray." My body recovered a little, and I slapped her hand away with a hoarse voice, and responded firmly, "You will know whether I lied or not when you watch the surveillance." Her face suddenly darkened, and she said unkindly, "David is so kind that he wouldn't even step on an ant to death. He won't wrongly accuse you." I was so depressed that I pushed Emily away and left the bed, ignoring my fever. But Emily held me back and said, "The school already knows that you stole things. As long as you give him the admission quota to Harvard University, I will go and plead for you to suppress this matter." In an instant, I felt cold to the bone. It turned out that Emily suddenly cared about me again, just to use both soft and hard tactics to make me give the precious quota to David. Her father is a trustee of the school, and her words can distort right and wrong. But my father worked 3 jobs every day with a limp to support my studies. I just wanted to save face and let my father live a good life. Doesn't she know? I won't admit to something I didn't do. You've already taken my watch, do you want to take everything from me? I won't give anything that belongs to me to anyone else. I refused coldly, and the unfamiliar chill on my body made Emily's face look particularly ugly. She sneered at my disobedience, "Then don't blame me for being rude." That evening, the school forum reported that I had stolen someone's expensive watch. The matter even spread online. James looks like a talented student that prestigious schools are vying for, but I didn't expect him to be a money-obsessed thief. What's the point of having good grades? He'll be a social scum after graduation. David even recorded a video himself, crying about how important the watch was to him, causing countless people to cyberbully me. Not only that, even my roommates put away their valuables, fearing that I would steal. I was wondering why that t-shirt worth more than 1,000 yuan disappeared. Humph, it turns out someone stole it. You can't judge a person by his appearance. Be more careful next time. I didn't expect Emily to be so ruthless. I was hated by everyone and I was like a rat crossing the street in school. I went to get some hot water, but David splashed hot water on me with a cup, and blisters formed on the back of my hand. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Who told you to bump into me just now?" In front of other classmates, David looked at me innocently. The burning pain in the gloating eyes of the people around me made me push him away angrily. I said angrily, "David, I warn you not to go too far." Who knew that David took advantage of the situation and fell to the ground, then covered my hand that didn't touch him at all and screamed in pain, "I've already apologized, what else do you want?" "James, you're going too far. James, what are you doing?" When I was stunned, Sophia's extremely angry voice suddenly came from behind. David cried, "Sophia, my hand was scalded by James's boiling water, it hurts." She ran in and saw a little red mark on David's hand, which looked like a burn. She immediately pulled him up with heartache and yelled at me with gritted teeth, "James, your jealous and greedy face is really ugly." David looked at me and said with a wronged look on his face, "I don't want to live in the school dormitory anymore. I'm afraid of being bullied again." Sophia responded gently, "Okay, I'll take you to my villa. No one will dare to bully you when I'm here." Sophia's villa, in the past, she had never brought other boys to it except me. She once said that I was her special brother and only I was qualified to enter her secret world. But now, watching Sophia anxiously hugging David and leaving, my anger turned into a bitter smile and I went to the infirmary alone. Then, I contacted Mr. Mark, the mentor of the National Secret Project. "I am willing to do my best for the project you mentioned before." The next day, Sophia asked David for leave so that he didn't have to go to school. It is said that she also hired a teacher to give him private lessons. As for me, I just wanted to stay as far away from them as possible. After self-study that night, I was going to the library to study the topic of the project. On the way, I was suddenly caught by Sophia and her men and taken to an uninhabited forest. She slapped me hard, and only stopped when I was bruised and swollen. She said to me angrily, "I am so disappointed in you, James. Do you know that what you are doing will ruin David's life?" I covered my burning face, stared at her with 1,000 arrows piercing my heart, and asked in confusion, "What are you talking about? I don't understand." She showed me a video, which showed David and a middle-aged woman having sex in a hotel. Sophia angrily said, "You drugged David and sold him to a rich woman for money. You are such a beast. You must kneel down and apologize to David." I responded with red eyes, "I have only kneeled to my parents in my life. I will never kneel to them even if they beat me to death." He was obviously selling himself and was discovered. "Why are you accusing me?" Not expecting that I would yell back, Sophia immediately ordered to teach me a lesson. They beat me to death, and finally my bones were broken, and I fell to my knees helplessly. Seeing a mouthful of blood suddenly spit out of my mouth, Sophia's eyes flashed with a trace of heartache. But the next second, David jumped out from nowhere with a pale face, and his face was red from crying. Seeing his miserable state, Sophia's heartache for me suddenly turned into extreme disgust, and she shouted, "You made David depressed, apologize to him quickly, or I will break your legs tonight." I said weakly, "I didn't do it." David walked up to me and stepped on the back of my hand, which was still healed from the burn at an angle that Sophia couldn't see. I screamed in pain, "Ah!" David said with a look of grievance, "Classmate James, are you going to retaliate against me like this just because they are nice to me? After you drugged me, I was raped by that middle-aged fat woman. I have had nightmares every night these days. If Sophia hadn't been with me, I wouldn't even dare to sleep." His eyes were swollen from crying, but he had a hideous smile on his face. But no matter how he and Sophia forced me, I would rather die than give in. In the end, I was beaten to pieces by Sophia's men. Sophia saw that I closed my eyes in pain, but still stubbornly said nothing. She asked me in a disappointed tone, "Is it so difficult to apologize?" I responded weakly, "I didn't do it." She glared at me fiercely and finally said, "Forget it, let this poor money-loving bastard fend for himself here." David asked nervously, "But my innocence?" Sophia gently stroked David's face and said, "Don't worry, I have already had the video processed, no one will see it." After that, she took him away. Is poverty wrong? I was in so much pain that I couldn't stop crying, but I have never done anything that was against the law for money. In my grief and despair, I suddenly saw a staggering figure walking towards me. I widened my eyes and shouted, "Dad!" It was my dad. He saw the news online and couldn't get through to me on the phone, so he came to the school to find me. My dad looked at me with a distressed face and said, "I believe my son will never take a single needle or thread from others. You are the most upright man." In my despair, only my father gave me the greatest trust and support. I endured the pain and smiled at him. "Dad, don't worry, I won't be defeated by them, I will make us all live a good life." He used his thin shoulders and hands to lift me up even though I was covered in blood. He used his disabled leg to carry me to the hospital with determination, just like the journey he had walked in his entire life. Every step was very difficult, but he carried me to the hospital with determination. The next morning, my dad said he was going to work and asked me to rest assured and recover in the hospital. I watched him leave and picked up the book in my hand to read. Little did I know that this was the last time he left me. Although my whole body was in pain, I felt relieved away from Sophia and the others. While leaning on the bed and reading a book, David suddenly sent me a boastful message. It turned out that today was his birthday and they were going to hold the most grand birthday party for him. And today is also my birthday. In previous years, these good friends who grew up with me would prepare birthday gifts for me, but I never used any of those expensive birthday gifts. I wanted to wait until the day when I became successful before opening these precious gifts. But this year, I was completely forgotten by them in the quiet ward. I fell asleep while reading a book, and suddenly, the ringing of the phone woke me up, and I felt an inexplicable uneasiness in my heart. I answered the strange phone call, and in an instant, the sky fell down, and my father was hit by a car and died. I limped over and saw my dad's body lying alone in the morgue. I cried and trembled, "Dad! Dad! How could this happen? How could my dad be hit and killed?" The staff member couldn't bear it and pointed his finger and whispered, "Is today your birthday? This should be the birthday cake your father bought for you." I raised my tearful eyes and saw a birthday cake that had long since turned into a pulp next to him. The police showed me the video from the camera. A familiar white luxury car hit my dad and flew away. Then they said the video was broken, but I still saw a figure that looked like David. However, the criminal who turned himself in was not David. No matter how I explained that this person was confessing for someone else, the police didn't believe me. I couldn't produce any evidence, so I could only let David go unpunished. I cried so hard that my eyes almost went blind in front of the morning hall. I remembered that my father seemed to say to me in a daze last night, "I will prove your innocence to them, son, Dad will protect you." So he wanted to find Mia and the others, but was hit and killed by David, who was going to a birthday party at the intersection outside Mia's villa. And Mia and the others actually helped David find someone to take the blame, otherwise how could he escape the law with his ability? In the night, Sophia, Mia, and Emily walked into the morning hall. I knelt there, heartbroken. Sophia came up to me, looked at me condescendingly and said, "Please accept my condolences. Your father is dead now, and we will let bygones be bygones for what you did in the past." Ah, this is ridiculous. What right do you have to show up in front of me with such an attitude of charity? I raised my head, and my eyes were filled with hatred and coldness like a demon. Emily felt a little uneasy and said nervously, What do you mean? We didn't kill your father." I got up and threw all the things piled in the corner out. When they saw that they were all gifts they had given me before, they suddenly panicked. "James, what are you doing? These are all our gifts. Don't you love money? Do you know how valuable these gifts are?" I jumped up and roared angrily, "Get out. I don't want to see you beasts anymore." The staff of the crematorium helped me drive them out. A few days later, Emily learned that I had voluntarily given up my admission to Harvard University. She was happy for a moment and wanted to tell David the good news. But the next second, she seemed to realize something. I said I would not give up something that belongs to me. "Why do you suddenly want such a precious place?" She called me frantically, only to find that I had blocked her. She immediately told Sophia and Mia, and the three of them ran to the dormitory to find me in a panic. My roommate scratched her head and said in surprise, "Didn't he tell you? He has participated in a national secret project and has rushed to the airport. I'm afraid he will never come back." "No, he didn't say anything. How could he never come back?" They panicked, praying that I was just joking with them. Mia's driver drove the three of us to the airport as fast as possible. On the way, Emily changed her number and kept sending me messages and calling me, "James, where do you want to go? Come back." But she didn't know that I had cancelled my original number, and I had nothing to do with their world anymore. Sophia urged fiercely, "Drive faster, you have to stop him." Did we go too far with him? Mia's hands trembled as she thought about what had happened during this period, especially when David, who had no driver's license, drove her sports car and hit and killed my dad. In order to protect the terrified David, she switched him. In other words, she was the indirect murderer of my dad. When they arrived at the airport, they saw me holding my father's ashes in my hands and boarding a green special plane. Mia actually used her connections to let them in at the airport. "James, David won't be admitted to Harvard University, it's still yours," Sophia shouted at me. Emily ran over angrily, trying to stop me from getting on the plane, and shouted, "As long as you come back, you will still be my only confidant, do you hear me?" However, several men in military uniforms with guns and live ammunition suddenly appeared in front of her. A man with a scar on his face and a very cold look responded in a very scary way, "Student James is now a national talent. Scientific research projects are not a joke. I don't care who you are. Leave immediately, otherwise don't blame me for being rude." They were frightened and took a few steps back, but still refused to leave. At this time, I saw them all regretting their mistakes, as if I was such a precious commodity. But it was too late. Ever since my father passed away, I would never forgive anyone again. "James, we don't want to do that to you either. If you behave and don't target David, I will treat you well. At this point, they still refused to believe me. I hugged the ashes tightly, holding back tears of hatred, and responded with a firm look in my eyes. I have begged you many times to watch the surveillance. As long as you watch the surveillance, the truth will be revealed, but you only believe David's words. Go away, I will never see you again in this life. After saying that, I turned around and walked into the cabin resolutely. The helicopter took off, and they stood there in a daze. Until at some point, Emily came to her senses, quickly called her school director's father, and pulled up the surveillance footage of the day David's watch was lost. Not long after, the three of us collapsed instantly after seeing the surveillance footage of that day. It turned out that during the physical education class that day, I just put the gift I gave to Emily in her desk, and soon I left the classroom and returned to the playground. I never sat next to David from beginning to end. Not long after I left, David saw me on the playground and went back to the classroom to rest on the pretext of feeling unwell. He stole the pen I had worked hard to buy, broke it ruthlessly, threw it into the trash can with a ferocious look on his face, and screamed in a crazy voice, "You piece of junk, die like your owner." Then, he slipped out of the classroom and came to the remote abandoned teaching building of the school. He actually hugged a middle-aged fat woman and rolled into the classroom next door. Emily covered her mouth and said in surprise, "Isn't this the woman in the video? David lied to us, what James said is true." Sophia thought of how I was beaten to pieces and vomited blood, and she screamed and slapped herself, not caring at all about her pretty face becoming ugly. She said regretfully, "It hurts, but it hurt even more when I had him beaten." Big tears rolled down Mia's face, and she fell to the ground as if all the strength was drained away from her body. "It's my fault, I shouldn't have disbelieved him, and I even shielded the murderer who killed his father, woo-woo." They finally remembered that I have always been such an honest and kind person. At this moment, I regretted it so much that my intestines turned green. Later, they found out that David sold the watch himself, and it was not a relic left by his grandfather at all. The watch was given to him by the rich woman who supported him. The three women were so kind to David in the past and so cruel to me, and at that moment, they hated him just as much. So, the three angry women arrested David and locked him up in a dark basement. David refused to admit what he had done at first, but when Sophia took out the watch he had sold and showed the surveillance videos, he had to admit it. Soon, however, he calmed down. David took out his cell phone and said proudly, "I have your nude photos. If you dare to harm me, I will expose all these naked photos." He actually thought that this would intimidate the three people, but he didn't expect that it would only anger them further and prove that he was a complete beast. "You dare to take pictures of me secretly, then you don't want this hand anymore. I want to avenge James." Emily was more ruthless than David imagined, and she actually had David's hands chopped off. David screamed, crawling on the ground like a worm, asking Sophia and Mia for help. However, when his face was covered with tears and snot, which stained Sophia's high heels, Sophia's sharp heels immediately pierced into his proud face. "You made me lose James, he is the brother I love most in my life, I want you to live a life worse than death." Then, she kicked David's bloody face several times, and he fainted directly from the pain. Even Mia, the school beauty who was the most gentle and caring to him, stopped helping him and dragged him into a bathtub filled with ice water. "Don't think I don't know what you did that night. I want you to pay him back 100-fold for what he suffered." When Mia doted on him, she could turn a blind eye to everything he did, but when Mia wanted to abandon him, she would make him live a life worse than death. They didn't let David die, but after torturing him enough, they locked him in the basement. David had no parents, and after his grandfather died, he became an orphan. After he disappeared, some people asked about him at first, but as everyone graduated, they completely forgot about him. I became a talented student, guided by the top scientific research team, and entered a national secret laboratory. Since I was admitted as an exception after graduating from high school, I worked harder than others to prove myself, forgot the pain I had experienced, and immersed myself in the project. This immersion lasted for 4 years. For 4 years, the three of them have been using all their resources to find out about me, but even they can't detect this highest level of world. 4 years later, the project has achieved significant phased results, and I have also grown from an ignorant teenager to a mature scientific researcher while continuing to study. On this day, Mr. Mark walked into the laboratory happily. He told me that I could leave the base temporarily. "You and I will go to this remarkable achievement sharing meeting. You have been locked up here for 4 years. It's time to go out and see the world. Because we signed the agreement, we can't leave the base at will. After all, I am still a teenager." Mr. Mark saw that I missed the outside world after being in the base for a long time. "Really? Aren't my seniors more qualified?" Looking at my happy yet suspicious face, Mr. Mark patted me on the shoulder. "Of course it's true, how could I lie to you? So I quickly ran back to the room to pack my luggage, and the next day, I got on a plane and flew to the city I had left for 4 years. A few days later, one night, we attended a drinking party. A senior leader got drunk and arrogantly said, "Everyone here is just a bunch of bulls and horses like them." This made everyone at the table very disappointed. When the party was over, he drove out in a white sports car. I hurriedly went up to persuade him not to drive drunk, but he pushed me hard and I tripped over the steps behind me and fell to the ground. "Who the hell are you to talk to me like that?" After saying that, he stepped on the accelerator and drove away. Mr. Mark came over angrily and was about to help me up, when suddenly a white and tender hand stretched out from the side and took me up. "Are you okay?" It turned out to be Olivia, the daughter of the Olivia family who was at the same table. "I'm fine, thank you." I was a little shaky after drinking some wine, and I staggered, and Olivia grabbed my hand and generously put it on her shoulder. I wanted to take my hand back embarrassedly, but she smiled and responded, "We are all colleagues from now on, don't be polite to me, I will take you and Mr. Mark back to the hotel. Olivia is a top student at Harvard University, and will join our base as a researcher to contribute to the country. It is said that the power behind her is even more unfathomable. This secret experiment is actually fully funded by Olivia's family." As the driver of Olivia's family drove us to the hotel, I suddenly saw a cordon at the intersection. Inside the cordon, a white sports car was stuck crookedly in the flower bed, and a dozen meters away, a body with blood and flesh flying everywhere was lying on the ground. The car looked familiar, so I immediately shouted, "Stop." The driver quickly stopped the car on the side of the road, and I opened the door and ran out. Sure enough, the car was the car of the high-ranking executive just now. The man fell to the ground and trembled, and he was sober. When the body lying in the distance was carried over on a stretcher, I widened my eyes in shock. Although David's face was stained with blood, he was too thin and half of his face was destroyed, but even if he turned into ashes, I could still recognize him. I didn't expect that the person who was hit and killed was him. At this time, I realized that this intersection was the intersection where he hit my father and killed him. At that time, he was also driving a white sports car. I suddenly thought that there really is karma. Tears welled up in my eyes, snowflakes fell one after another, and I covered the diamond hanging around my neck with my hands. "Dad, did you see it with your own eyes? Your revenge has finally been taken." The next day, I learned from Olivia, who loves to watch the fun, that not only was David's face disfigured, but his hands were chopped off, his feet had marks from being chained for years, and his body was covered with countless new and old scars of abuse. Olivia said puzzledly, "I don't know who has such a big grudge against him and has been abusing him all the time. He should have escaped from somewhere, but it's a pity that he was hit to death as soon as he escaped." TSK. Olivia didn't know, but I could guess that in the past few years, he must have been tortured by my 3 good friends who grew up with him. Unfortunately, I didn't sympathize with him at all. I just felt that he deserved it. Even if he didn't die today, I would come back for revenge. Now that he is dead, the stone in my heart has finally fallen to the ground. Olivia seemed to see that I was worried, but she didn't ask me. In the evening, she invited me to have a hot pot. Later, I went with Mr. Mark to attend the last important international seminar before returning to the base. I didn't expect that after the meeting, I actually met Emily. Emily looked at me, her eyes red, and said, "James, do you know how hard I have been looking for you these years?" Emily has now grown from an 18-year-old girl into a woman in a well-dressed suit, revealing a restrained, charming and domineering style. Unfortunately, when I saw her face, I just wanted to take a detour. Seeing that I ignored her and was about to leave, she hurriedly ran up to stop me and said anxiously, "Don't think I don't know where you are now. Let me tell you, I have also applied to join your project. Don't try to avoid me in the future." I stared at Emily coldly and said, "Ms. Emily, if you want to join our research for personal reasons, I advise you to give up as soon as possible." She immediately showed a hurt look, took out a watch from her bag and handed it to me, saying aggrievedly, "I have helped you punish that bitch David, and I have got the watch back for you. Can you forgive me?" Looking at the familiar watch, all the past things suddenly came to my mind. I was not moved at all, but felt suffocated. I took back the watch and said coldly, "No, it was not David who hurt me, but you. The watch is back, but the happiness of relying on my father will never come back." I turned around and left, but I didn't expect to bump into a charming woman behind me. I looked up and saw that it was Sophia. I frowned, totally speechless. They were really well informed. "I've only been back for less than half a month, how come they all appear here?" Sophia said to me coquettishly, "James, I don't ask you to call me sister like before, but please don't ignore me, okay? In my life, I only recognize you as my brother." I said calmly, "It's a pity that I don't have the blessing to enjoy your love as a sister." Sophia's face turned pale and she responded awkwardly, I didn't mean to beat you so badly at that time. Beat you back. I am willing to accept any revenge you give me. I gritted my teeth and sneered, is the pain of the flesh as painful as the pain of the heart? You will never understand. Just as the two of them surrounded me, with red eyes, they were determined to keep me, I suddenly heard a voice beside my ear. Honey, who are they? Are you looking for a new love behind their backs? I looked up and saw that it was Olivia. Seeing Olivia winking at me mischievously, I immediately pushed them away, strode forward, took her hand and said, Honey, don't be angry, they are just insignificant passers-by, and it's really annoying that they keep pestering me. At this moment, Emily took 2 steps back in disbelief, and Sophia's face suddenly slid down a few lines of tears. James, you said you would marry me before. Emily's eyes were red with anger. I stared at her fearlessly and taunted her, didn't you forget what we said when we were 5 years old earlier than I did? When we were 5 years old, we were playing games and Emily made a pinky promise to marry me. She had always been good to me in her life, but how did she treat me because of David? Did she lose her memory? I held Olivia's hand and walked towards the parking lot without looking back, but I saw Mia in the parking lot, who looked exhausted, as if she had just rushed back from another place. Seeing me and Olivia holding hands, she approached me with a look of deep loss in her eyes and asked loudly, James, do you really not want us? Looking at her beautiful and elegant face, my head hurt, and I yelled, What qualifications do you have to ask me? Don't you forget about my father's death? Mia said doubtfully, I haven't forgotten, so I decided to give you all my shares and property as compensation. I just hope you can forgive me, woo-woo. I responded with red eyes, no amount of money can buy back my father's life, so I will never forgive you in this life. Emily and Sophia, who came over, heard this. Sophia fell to the ground. My words were like a sharp knife, ruthlessly cutting their hearts and cutting off their lucky hopes for the past few years. Seeing them depressed and regretful, I felt a sense of pleasure. Not long after, Mr. Mark, Olivia and I returned to the research base to continue our journey. I told Mr. Mark about my past, and he felt very sorry for me. He then personally intervened to have Emily's final application rejected, and she failed to become my colleague as she wished. Olivia joined our team, and I found that she was not the kind of young lady I imagined like the other 3. She could endure boring experiments and closed life. As we got along day by day, I gradually fell in love with her. Later, we confessed our feelings to each other and officially started dating. I told her my story, and Olivia lay in my arms and kissed my face gently. The disaster is over, and everything will be fine in the future. Another 3 years passed, Olivia and I got married, our experiment was finally successful, and we officially returned to the outside world. At this time, I realized that the 3 of them were now living a miserable life. Emily's father was found to have committed corruption, bribery, and covering up school bullying, and was removed from the school board. Emily's formerly glamorous job was affected, and she was fired. She was originally depressed because of my case, and finally couldn't accept the reality and went crazy. Mia's family business failed, and Mia was sold to a pervert by her father in exchange for the survival of the Mia family. Before long, she contracted a sexually transmitted disease and was kicked out of the house. Mia's family also thought she was a disgrace and did not accept her. Eventually, she became a nightclub hostess and was once sent to prison during a crackdown on pornography and illegal publications. Sophia married an old man from a research institute and was abused by him all day long. In the end, she had a broken leg and became disabled for life. I once saw Sophia on the road. She was limping to the market with a big belly. Her elegant and refined face was gone. She ran away when she saw me. I didn't chase her. They are just strangers to me now. They must have felt the pain I suffered. I continued to devote myself to the cause of the country and always wore my father's diamond necklace, taking him to see the happy life of the present and the future. Soon after, my child with Olivia was born, and I hugged my wife and our baby with tears in my eyes, knowing that my future life would be even happier.